So, Kyan, in this video, I'm going to break down how to start doing the tournament services for some of your athletes, okay? And the exact process in terms of how to track things in your notebook for your students and how to really just do the match play analysis in the most optimal way, okay? Because it's one thing to write stuff down, but you want to make sure that you're actually writing down the most relevant stuff, okay? So, all right, so before we even get into any of the points, anything like that, what happens before your player starts their match, right? So you show up to the tournament, right? Let's say, the family books you or, you're doing it for free at the beginning, whatever, and you show up to your player's match, okay? Number one, they should have already gotten a really good warm up in, okay? That's a different video, okay? I have a lot of resources that talk about that, but what we're talking about now is, okay, it's match time, okay? Your athlete's on court, they're doing their warm up, and they're starting, okay? So during the 5 minute warm up, okay, before you write anything down about any points they're playing, okay, you need to make some notes in the warm up, okay? So what that means is take inventory and take note of the opponent, okay? Some strengths, some weaknesses, but the main thing there is identify what are some things that you're noticing off the bat from the opponent in the warm-up that potentially your athlete can take advantage of, right? So when I'm doing the match play review, and I'm looking back in some of my notes right now of like some older matches, and I always have a section at the top, okay? So first of all, I date it. So put the date on the top of the page, put the date of the match, put the surface that they're playing on, okay? Put your athlete's name, and ideally put their opponent's name as well, okay? And their opponent's respective UTR level if they have a rating, all right? And then, yeah, just keep track of like how many matches they're playing and stuff. But let's say it's match one of the tournament. And yeah, so just have some basic organization at the top there. And then the first section you want to have is what's going on in the warm up. Okay. So for example, for a girl who I was doing this for, the girl who she was playing was like really small, right? So that's one thing before they even hit a ball that I can tell immediately, right? Okay, this girl is particularly small. So like that's something that my student can take advantage of, right? Strategically with certain tactics, right? Maybe keeping it above her strike zone, maybe playing certain balls, or at least being able to experiment with certain things, okay? And this is not only going to help your athlete, but it's also going to help you as a coach be aware of these things and be able to apply it for your students, okay? So first section at the top, you want to have the warm-up section and identify any things that you're noticing in the warm-up, right? So it could be, okay, well, this girl has a really kind of weird like backhand, like technically, right? So like it's probably going to break down. Okay, well, you can write that down. Well, what if, the girl who you're doing the tournament services for, your student, she hits a ball to the opponent. They are on the run on the forehand. And like every time in the warm up, when they're on the run on a particular side, they miss their shot, right? Okay, well, that's a pattern I noticed. Okay, boom, let me write that down, right? Maybe it's the opponent never even warmed up their volleys in the warm up. Light bulb's got to be going off. This girl doesn't like to volley. This guy doesn't like to volley. So like take note of what happens in the warm up, okay? And at the beginning, when you're starting to do this and when you're starting your tournament services, all right, and adding this additional service to your business, you want to go above and beyond. So like at the beginning, it's better to because look, you don't really know how to be super efficient with it right now. So at the beginning, like go above and beyond, and like it's okay to write down like a little bit too much even, right? And then you can learn how to be more efficient and how to optimize. Okay, and I'm going to help you with that right now. But so first thing is that warm-up component, that warm-up section. All right. Now from there, the first component after that is you're just going to write on the piece of paper, okay? You're going to go 0-0, which is the current score, Okay. And then you're going to note, okay, before every single game, like who's serving and who's returning. Okay. And what I do personally is I keep it from the perspective of like my player, right? So I put receiving, right? Because my player, she was receiving the first game. And here's how you want to organize it. So you're going to literally write down for every single point, but it's like, what do you note? What shouldn't you note? All right. Now look, this is kind of an art. It's not really a science to it, but what I want you to do is you put, so for example, 0-0 at the top, right? And that's for the games. That's the current game score. All right. Then under that, then you want to put the score within the game. So now it's 0-0 first point. Okay. So then you just put 0-0 and then you put like a little arrow. And then now you're ready for the opponent to start the point, right? So you want to kind of get this done like before they even serve, like the first point. So let's say, they do the spin, the other opponent chooses to serve, they choose to serve. So my player, she's receiving. So I'm like, okay, great. And then I put 0-0 because I'm getting ready for that first point. All right. Now, like I said, at the beginning, it's okay to list a lot of things, but I want to give you some clarity on what to list for sure. Okay. So you want to, okay, first thing, the most important thing right now is take note of how the point is won or lost. And then use your coaching judgment to write anything else down that either your player like either didn't do that they should have done, or like something that they did well, right? But the main message there is note exactly what happened to end the point, right? So for example, and I'm going to take you through like some more steps here, but that's kind of the fundamental thing of what you want to do. Okay. Now, when you're going through the points, right, and the person serves, okay, and we're going to actually go into this match here, Djokovic versus Federer, Wimbledon 2019, and we're going to go through like a game or two or three, and I'll kind of break down for you like how I would personally like take notes for it, okay? But what you want to do at the beginning is take note of like the serves, okay? So anytime, let's say like, so Federer here on the screen, let's say like he misses his first serve, okay? You're going to write something to indicate that they missed their first serve. Because as a coach, it's important to know like how, like basically the serve is the most important shot, and you want to be aware of, are they hitting their first serves? Are they hitting their second serves? So what I do personally is if the person serving misses their first serve, what I do is I write second. So I put a 2 and then the ND, and I put second, and then I put an arrow. And then I say, okay, I know that now they're hitting their second serve, okay? Now, if you're working on something super particular with an athlete, you can indicate like, okay, they missed like the slice serve out wide and they missed it at a particular error, right? Now, right now I'm going to keep it super simple. I'm not going to overcomplicate it, but like I said, I recommend going above and beyond and writing as much as possible when you're starting, okay? And then you'll get a feel for like what you really need to note and what you don't need to note as much, okay? But it's better to take too many notes than not enough notes, okay? So, person serves. They missed their first serve. Okay, I put second, okay? So, 2, boom, arrow. Okay, good. Now, what I also do is I indicate what was the error. Was it in the net? Was it wide? Was it long? Especially for when my player is serving. Okay. So, you don't have to do that like every single point, like for your opponent, for the opponent of your athlete. But I do recommend listing when your player is serving, list exactly what the error was. Was it net? Was it wide? Was it long? All right. And bare minimum is list that they missed the serve. Okay. Like that they're on their second serve. Okay. Now, if you're kind of strategizing with your athlete before the match correctly, you probably are going to know where your student's going to be serving more often than not. So you're not going to really have too many questions about that. But but it's more about knowing like what is their error, and then you can use that information. If you see, okay, well, every single 70% of her serve errors were in the net. Okay, well, like that's got to be a focus. Or like there were wide. Okay, well, maybe that was a good error for whatever thing we were working on. Or maybe it was long, right? Whatever, right? Maybe there wasn't enough spin on the kick, right? Or whatever it was, and it was missing long. So that's kind of when you use your coaching expertise to kind of guide there. But let's get back to it. So basically, as an example, you write down, okay, they missed, so second, okay, they're on their second serve. Okay, great. Now they play the point, right? And you see what happens, and you see how someone wins it or loses the point, okay? And what was the specific error? So an example of this could be the page I'm looking at right now for this athlete in this match was net, forehand. It was an error, a forehand in the net. Okay, so what you do is you list, okay, how they either won or lost the point. Okay, so net, forehand. Okay, got it. So now you write love 15. So in this situation, in this scenario, my student was receiving. Okay, so you want to list the scores that you're writing down correctly, meaning I'm not going to write 15 love. I'm going to write love 15 because you want to make sure that you're keeping track the same way that they're calling the score. Okay, so make sure you stick with that. All right. Now, that's just basic stuff, but it's important. So now, so for this example, love 15, right? So it was a forehand in the net, okay? And now it's love 15, meaning that my athlete, she won that point. So the opponent missed her forehand in the net, okay? Now, you write out under that love dash 15, and then you put an arrow, okay? Now, from there, for example, I'm just going to walk you through the example I'm looking at right now from this particular match. And I put second. So the athlete, my athlete's opponent missed their first serve. Okay. Second serve, arrow. Okay. And then it was a double fault. So the opponent double faulted. So I put op double fault. So opponent double fault. And then you can find abbreviations to make the workflow a little easier for you. But the important factor is that you understand the notes you took. You don't just want to write a bunch of bullshit and then you have no clue like what's going on when you look back at it, So make sure you keep it simple and make sure that you'll create your own little language that you use so that you can kind of take notes quickly, right? Because it's like every point, obviously, right? So you want to keep up with it. So for example, like the next point, so now it's 15 all. So basically here, okay. Hold up. So, okay. Yeah. So then in this situation, it would be love 30 because the opponent double faulted. Okay. So, let me actually make one correction. I'm looking at my notes here. Cause this is an old match, but one thing, that I'm realizing now is when you're writing the notes, keep it from the perspective of your athlete in terms of like the error and whatnot. So like the first point note that I wrote when I wrote net forehand, okay, that was actually I believe that was actually my athlete. Because I'm looking after, and I list the name of the person who does it. But what you want to do is, so in this particular example, actually, my athlete, she hit the ball in the net the first point. Okay, so the rule that I use is I write down, if it's the opponent, if I'm commenting on the opponent's either error or shot they did, what I do is I write OP, okay, for opponent, and then I write down like whatever occurred. And then I have a general rule that if I don't list down specifically that, I'm referring to the athlete I'm working with, right? So whether it's like forehand in the net or whatever, double fault, whatever. And then you can kind of use context, all right? But for this particular example, so for this particular example, I noted that the opponent double faulted, and then on to the next point, okay? So in this scenario, it's actually 15 all, okay? And then I actually wrote down in this example that it was a backhand in the net from my athlete, and I wrote down her name here. But for privacy purposes, I'm not gonna list that. But yeah, so then you basically list the error, right, from what it was, okay? And what I do is, if it's a return error or like a first ball error, I'll write down like exactly what shot it was, okay? But the minimum is you have to know like what the basic error was or how it was won or lost, right? So if it's a winner, you list down what occurred. If it's an error, like what type of error was it? And yeah, you can put as much detail as you want, but it's important to know like what the fundamental things that you should be listing are, okay? So take note of those. Now, from there, you want to also list. So let me look through here. So when you're going through the games, make sure that like you're keeping track clearly of each point, okay? And yeah, I'm gonna give you some more examples now of how you can actually do this, and I'm actually gonna run it through with this particular video here for Djokovic and Federer. Okay, so let's actually start here and let's get right into it. So this is the start of the match. I am going to start it here. So it's 0-0, right? It's 0-0 and Federer serving, right? So let's get into it. So let's say Federer is my student.
15 love.
Okay. So we hit an ace, slice out wide ace. So I would write, so it's 0-0, arrow, slice, out wide, ace. That's what I would write. And I would also list like one, if you're working on like breaking the sideline in the service box on the slice and it hits that goal and it breaks through the sideline there, I would also indicate that, okay? But the main thing is just list slice winner, slice ace, out wide. Okay, so I would put second, okay, because he hit the net and then he missed the serve. So I would put second and then net, because I want to specify for my own athlete, since Federer would be my student, I want to specify for my athlete what was their error. So I can be aware of, like, looking back from the practice standpoint, like, okay, for our next week of training, like, what should be our focus? Like, if there's anything major, like patterns that we realize from like looking back at like the whole match play, right? So, yeah, so I'd put second, net, because that's where he hit it. He hit it in the net. Okay, so I would put, so let's go back a second here. Okay, so then because Djokovic missed his forehand return inside out wide, you would just note that error, right? Op, return, error, inside out, I-O, wide, right? Just keep it super, super simple. Just list exactly what occurred. And be keeping track now, right? So you're like, okay, 30 dash love, okay, boom. And then you put an arrow to the side. Okay, so then I would put forehand down the line, error wide. I would put forehand down the line, DTL, down the line. It's a good slice serve out wide. And also what I would put, because the reason why Federer missed this particular shot, if you look at it, is because after his serve, he was stuck. His footwork, okay, adjusting on the +1, it actually wasn't good enough, which is kind of crazy actually to see from Federer. But that's the reason why he missed that. So if you look back, look at his slice. Okay, he executes a great slice. Now look, Djokovic is returning, and strategically, any high-level player, they're going to be trained and they're usually going to be coached to return deep to the opponent's feet. Because Djokovic could play cross, Djokovic could play line here, but if he plays it deep to Federer's feet, it's going to be the hardest situation for Federer to play that +1 shot. Okay, so Djokovic hits that return. Okay, now look, the ball is crossing the net. It's right over the net, and Federer is still inside the baseline. So automatically, like, he should have already been a little bit behind the baseline. Okay, the minute he's seeing that ball start to kind of trend middle. Okay, and he actually did take some steps. He took like 2 little steps, but I think he misread the ball, because he should have been a little bit further back. And Djokovic hit a good ball deep. I also think that Federer could have been a little bit more to the side. He could have done some more inside-out footwork to have a better angle on this +1 shot instead of just being purely in the middle. Because if you see where the ball bounced, it bounced right in line with his right foot. If I was Federer, I would try to get a little bit more around here on that ball, okay? But let's see how he executes it. It's internet. Yeah, so like for my athlete, I would note how like I would note the error, the specific error, and then if there's any glaring major reason why they made the error, right? So there, it's like, it's not a question of like Federer's technique or anything like that, obviously, right? That would be nuts. It's positioning, okay, would be the main thing, right? So like if that was my athlete, it's like kind of a footwork issue and it's a positioning issue. But, you know, this is like the 3rd point in the match, so it's not that big of a deal. But still, that's technically why he missed that ball, okay?
30,
so
15.
You would list that down. The error that they made, forehand down the line, wide error, and then you would list and this is like your coaching expertise of like what you believe is the fundamental reason why that occurred. Okay, and make sure it's something that you can actively work on afterwards. But yeah, and you'll get better as you like watch more matches and are in the trenches doing it more. So let's go on to the next point. So you would list, okay, it's 30-15, arrow to the side.
A worldwide piano sensation, critically acclaimed pianist Peter Bence will take the Kravis Center stage on March 17th. Join him for an incredible evening as he breaks the boundary between
40, 15.
Great. You'd put ace. You'd simply put ace. You would just simply put ace there. Ace down the tee, because you just hit that. Okay, now so you have 40-15, okay, and then you'd put a 2, like a second, you'd write second, okay, then arrow, and then I would put net, so second, net, and then arrow, and then see what he does here. And so also, I'm going to give you some examples because this is a professional match, obviously. This is a Grand Slam final, one of the best matches ever. And there's obviously like ball boys, and this is an official match. But there's a lot of other things that you can note as well, right? Like let's say Federer hits the serve in the net and there's no ball boys. And, you know, for like junior players, let's say like they just let the ball roll back in the middle of the court. And then they're going to hit the next serve. Like I would take note of that. I would take note of like things that are easily fixable that would increase their winning chances, but that the athlete doesn't do. right? Like if they don't move a ball that's in their court, it's like you're not taking care of the easy things that you can do for free to give yourself the best chance, right? So like, for example, especially like with younger athletes who like need to learn the right habits and, you know, don't have the luxury of having ball boys and all that, it's important to note these little details as well, right? Like is your player like drifting off their focus in between the points? Like, is there any little thing like that, right? They're not moving the ball. Like these are things that you should be listing down so you can actually help your athlete, okay? Okay, so made the second serve. Great. Forehand cross court winner on the +1. So go back. So kick T. Yeah. So I would just put forehand cross court winner on +1, on the +1 shot. Okay. And yeah. So that's literally what I would put. And then, so what you do after that is, so that's the game, right? That was 40-15. Now he has the game. So then what I would do is you put a line under that, and then directly under it, you put a line, you put the game here, the game, and then directly under that, you put the line, and then you go to the next game. Okay. And then you have all the other ones. Okay. And then what I would write is just the games, right? Okay. Now it's 1-0. And then next to it, just write like, is your athlete serving or returning? Right? So that's what I do. And then, yeah, you continue doing it, right? You continue doing it and you take notes like that. And there's like, you know, a lot of factors that you can check, but I'll just go through like some of the stuff that like I list down just to make sure like you kind of have some examples. But yeah, like one other thing that I do is I note, like for errors, I note whether it's a forced error or unforced error. Okay. For my athlete especially. I'll also list it like sometimes for like the opponent if I think it's relevant in the situation, but use your judgment for that. But the most important part is for your athlete and listing for like an example. I have one for one of my players who was like, okay, like second serve, okay, boom, return, whatever. And then forehand line, wide error, unforced. Okay. It's important to know whether it's unforced or forced because like we weigh that differently, right? So if it's somebody who, you know, is like, obviously like you understand the difference between unforced and forced error, but yeah, you just want to make sure that you note that so that when you look back at the training, you look back at the match play and you're adjusting training, you actually have the right information. Because an error is not just an error, right? If your opponent hits a ball 1,000 miles an hour at you, it's a very difficult shot. You're on the run. If they're playing a good shot, that's not necessarily like your fault. You're not necessarily doing something bad, right? If your opponent hits a great shot. So be aware of that because not all errors are created equal, okay? So now let's see what else. So yeah, I also make slight notes in terms of like the mental component that I see with my athletes in terms of like focus, discipline, routines, habits that they're doing. And I keep that pretty specific based on like what I'm working on the athlete with. So let's say that we talked about doing a particular routine in between points. Like, are they doing that, right? Like, are they going back to their towel? Are they taking time in between their points like we discussed, right? Like, are they sticking with like the strategies and targets that like you guys talked about, like going into your match? Okay. And yeah, like, is there any negative self-talk that you can actively see? Like, how's the body language? Like, note these things. So you want to write down like clearly and articulately, like what's actually happening in the points, like winning, losing, all that type of stuff. Like, what error was it? What type of winner was it, etc. But then you also want to list around your page some more like kind of macro things as well, like stuff that you're seeing that might not be relevant only to one point, but like more conceptually, like for your athlete to work on or something like that, right? So like what I do is I write down, especially like if you're like, this is like early in the journey of you working with an athlete, you want to write down a lot of these things, right? So like I would also be listing down as you're serving your athletes, like themes that they should be working on based on like what you're seeing. And look, like that could change like after the match, whatever, but at least write down like when it comes to mind, like immediately write it down. So you don't have to like remember everything because there's going to be stuff you're going to forget. So the best thing to do, it's better to write down too much than not enough. Okay. So, yeah. And then what I also do is it's also really important to list specifically stuff that you're identifying as the expert, as the coach, that your player can do strategically better to the opponent, and like literally list like exact tactics, right, that you're seeing are working, or you're seeing, okay, wait, my player should change and do this, okay, tactically, because you might be able to coach your player in the third set, right? And you might be able to give your player some info based on that. So make sure you're taking notes of that, or even your athlete might even play that opponent like next weekend, right? Or next month or 2 years from now. And then you'll have the database to go in and see, okay, wait, this is what worked against that player. And these are the strategies that we were kind of talking about, right? So, so focus on those things. And yeah, like it's okay to incorporate some stuff like that as well, where it's kind of more like tactical and strategical. Which I highly recommend as well. Okay. But, yeah, I mean, to keep it super simple, like that will give you a great starting point. I don't want to overcomplicate things too much, but like generally what it looks like is like per set, you probably, depending on how long the set is, and how long the points are and kind of the extent of notes. But, I mean, usually for matches, I mean, a match, like for example, this one, so it was like 4 pages, like it was like 4 pages in my journal for like one set. And then the second set was 1 page, 2 page. Yeah, so that was just 2 pages because that set, my athlete won that 6-0. So that was pretty quick. And yeah, so like that was just like 2 pages. But yeah, I mean, usually it would be kind of between like 2 and like 6 pages, depending. But like, dude, some of them can get really extensive. Like if you look at some of this stuff here, like it's a lot of detail, you know, and I like to keep track of everything so that I have all the information possible, after the match. Okay. So especially if, for example, like they're not able to record their match, like in that scenario as well, or at the facility, or they don't get permission to record. So it's really important to make sure that, you kind of go above and beyond at the beginning when you're taking the notes, and then you can dial it back and figure out, okay, what was really relevant, what maybe wasn't relevant, what do I maybe not need to list down that might have been unnecessary, but what was like really necessary, what was really impactful, right? What were kind of some major takeaways, right? So yeah, I mean, that will give you a great starting point. And yeah, like just make sure to keep organized with all that, list the opponent's name, put the date, and yeah, ideally put the surface as well, because those details help. And yeah, I would also make sure to include the rating, the specific UTR rating of the athlete at the time of playing the match, because that could change literally after the match goes in. So it is helpful to kind of have an awareness of that as well, just from like a macro long-term perspective. But yeah, that's basically it for today. Yeah, I'm just going through here. I mean, I have a ton of journal entries of this. So yeah, we can definitely make some more content about kind of going even more in depth with this stuff. But literally, if you just follow those things and those kind of rules right now, and just keep it super simple with that, and track those things and write those down, you're going to have more information than like most of the other coaches out there with their students, because they're not watching their athlete play in tournaments, and they're probably not even watching their footage too, right? So it's something that you can get a major edge, and just be really aware of like what your player is actually doing or not doing. And then there's no real mystery involved. It's like we can clearly see what's actually happening, right? And then based on what you're working on, what themes you're working on, you can focus more on those components when you're tracking certain things in the match play like review process. All right. And this is something that like I do live for families who hire me to do tournament services for my students, right? For their kid. So, yeah, I highly recommend implementing this for your students. And look, like when you start this, like you might have to do it for free for some people. Like when I first started doing this, I just showed up to my players' matches and I would just do this for the families. And then like, because I put in so much hustle and so much effort and so much care, right? If you genuinely care about the athletes you're working with, you want to help them get the best result. So I knew that if I was doing this, it would help them get a better result, right? So I did it, right? Give the families like custom training plans for the next week. Give them my feedback. Even at the beginning, it was literally just writing like almost like an essay in text to the parents and just sending them that. And then they love the feedback. They love the attention. They love the care. And then if you do a good job, right, the family will be like, well, how do we get you to do this for the next weekend? Because we loved it, right? And the kid probably will love it as well because they will love their coach being there to watch them, like most athletes, right? So when you can apply these things, like this is how you can start separating yourself as a coach. Because you have to think, okay, what is everybody else doing? What is some easy stuff that I can do now that will separate me from everyone else? In this right here, like obviously look, as a coach, use your expertise and like that's kind of the name of the game with like, are you coaching them right or wrong or the best way or not? But the basic level of kind of like where you're at is you got to leverage the hustle aspect and the care and the attention and go all in with that stuff. Because you can literally do that for free. And it's just by just hustling, you can get this up and running and operational. Okay. If you literally just hustle as hard as you can, try as hard as you can with writing down all the notes and all of that. And afterwards sending a great report to the families, right? And then like creating a plan based on what you're seeing in the match for the next weeks of training. Like most coaches don't do that. So that's what you can do, especially as you're younger, to kind of have that edge on the competition. Okay. So I hope that all makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions about any of this stuff. I'm happy to make like more content about it, and I definitely will. But this will just give you a foundational understanding and tactically like how to do it, right? Like how to tactically do it like now. Okay. But yeah, so I hope that helped. And yeah, if you have any other questions about anything at all, let me know. I hope you have a happy birthday today, bro. I know it's your birthday today, so happy birthday, Kyan. And yeah, man, hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.